probably one of the only things worse than forcing a cesarean on someone who doesn't want it and doesn't need it is not having one available for someone who
Right.
does need it.
Right. You're listening to the Active Mom Podcast with host Dr. Carrie Pagliano. I'm a mom, physical therapist, and your go-to guide for staying active with pelvic health issues in pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, and beyond. Whether you're a fellow mom, physical therapist, or women's health professional, join me where I'll share expert insights, real-life stories, and the latest research to help you approach running, CrossFit, yoga, Pilates, HIIT, or whatever activity you love with confidence and evidence-informed guidance. Let's start the show. All right, welcome back to the Active Mom Podcast. We have a returning guest, but talking about a new podcast and a really cool thing that he's been doing. So we have Dr. Elliot Berlin. He is a birth professional, doula, chiropractor, all the things. He is podcaster, all the things. And he has a new podcast he's going to tell us about. So Dr. Berlin, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for having me again and adding me to your incredible list of guests that you host on your podcast.
All right, well, tell us about it. What's this new offering you've got?
Well, we're always trying to keep busy, and we ask our audience for feedback. So we have our Informed Pregnancy podcast with excellent guests like you, and we try to be informative and entertaining at the same time. One of the most popular things we do is birth stories, and we do them oftentimes before and after. So we'll interview somebody during their pregnancy about the pregnancy and the birth that they're planning for and aiming towards, and then afterwards and talk about how the birth actually went. And sometimes that format, which is about 45 minutes for each part, works really well, but sometimes you have a really complex story that sometimes is 45 hours long, which only gives us 1 minute per hour to tell the story. And so we, in our feedback repeatedly, were asked, hey, take us deeper into that story. We want to know what happened there. And in order to deliver on that, I sort of copied the model of the Serial podcast. Serial tells one story over a season, over an arc, and they really get down to the nitty-gritty, interviewing lots of different people who are involved in that story and weaving it together almost like an audio docu-series. And so that's what we did. We took a really compelling mom who had a birth story with her first birth that was unexpected, but I think not uncommon, unfortunately. And we caught up with her during her second pregnancy, where she was really trying to process the experience that she had on a physical level, spiritual level, emotional level, ancestral level. And we bring in lots of dynamic characters in her life, her husband, her mom, her doula, midwife, obstetrician. They all come and share their perspectives, and we weave it together. And I'm really proud of the final product, and the reception has been incredible. And so I was going to call it Baby Serial, but I don't want to get sued. So we called it One Way or a Mother.
I love it. I remember when you guys sent me the first couple of episodes, and I don't listen to like the crime podcast or anything like that. I haven't gotten that far yet, but I was hooked. And I think part of it is those of us who are in this space professionally, we only get to hear part of the story. And we only get to hear it through one perspective. And not that that perspective is like the only one, but the other ones are, I think, are so important too. Like the partner, very rarely do I get to hear the partner's side of things, but obviously I've experienced it with my own kids. For you, when you were trying to figure out how to share these stories, how important was it for you to be, not only include, the family members, and with Ariana, you bring in her mom a little bit, and then also bring in the birth professionals as well. Like how comprehensive are you thinking as you're kind of pulling this idea together?
I think that heeding the call to be brought deeper into the experience, together with my own curiosity and Ariana's incredible openness. I mean, she's a complete and total open book, a very dynamic storyteller. She can express what she's feeling in words that really take you into her journey. I mean, she literally gave us a front row seat to everything she was doing. And I think to make that picture complete, we needed to see the interactions that she was having with the people around her during the process. And so to the extent that she was willing to share and that those people were willing to join us,
Right.
I spread a wide net, and we caught a lot of interesting characters that really help make the story come to life for the listener with no visuals. You can just listen to it and picture everything going on.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the part that like I caught myself forgetting that this was a real person and a real story because it almost reads a little bit like a fiction book where you're like, I can't believe, this person went through all of this. But again, if you've been, and you kind of mentioned this earlier, like people are going to resonate with these stories because these things happen. Um, what's kind of some of the feedback that you've gotten so far for people that are like, wow, this was me, or I really identified with kind of what happened with Ariana?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the feedback messages that I've gotten a couple of times that sort of surprised me, but not really, is from women who had similar stories, and listened to Ariana's story together with their partner.
Oh,
And only through hearing someone else's story did they really start to understand what it was like for their own partner.
yeah,
And I'm not sure if that's because she's such a good storyteller or we did a good job putting it all together, but or sometimes it's just like what's right in front of you is a little hard to see.
right.
And when you see somebody else's experience with it that you're not um, affected by personally, then maybe sometimes the picture becomes clearer. So that's really great feedback and surprising in a wonderful way. I'm proud. We have a great team that really put this together. It's not like, I think doing any podcast is challenging. You have to figure it out, and but an interview with one person is a different world than
Mm-hmm.
sort of putting together this audio docuseries. It was a whole new level of production for us, and we had a great team. It took a while to get it going, and we had a
Yeah.
great team, and each one contributed really well. And I was also excited by this feedback. When we dropped it, we did 3 episodes first, and the other
Mm-hmm.
7 1 week at a time. Now you could just binge it all together.
Yeah.
But during the process, like week 4 and week 5, people like my mom were like, "Can I get the next couple of episodes? I don't know if I could wait another whole week." And then even
Yeah.
Ariana herself, she's like, "Oh, I'm so excited for the next
Right?
one." I'm like,
And she
"You
knows
do
how it
know,
ends,
yeah, you
right?
know the story, like you've been there." So all those things were very positive, and we're excited. We are already working on season 2, which is another story that's totally different but extremely interesting. And season 3 gets even crazier. So
Yeah.
we're working on the next 2
Oh my
seasons right
gosh.
now.
I'm with your mom. Like I think you guys sent me the first couple and I'm like, no, no, no. I need the rest. Like I need to know how this ends.
Yeah, I actually, because of that, I've had patients tell me, and some of our listeners tell me, I'm not listening until they're all out. I can't
Right?
get stuck in the middle.
I know. I kind of feel that way with like Netflix shows and things like that. I'm not good when they drop week by week. I'm like, no, no, I've got time now. Let's see how it ends now.
We're spoiled because when we grew up,
Right?
there was no like
I
binge
know.
dumps.
No, no, and millennials, we had to wait for whatever happened next week or next season or whatnot.
I
But
assume that's why we're all in therapy.
right, that's another podcast. Well, but I'm thinking about as you have this idea, you find a group of people that are willing to talk with you, but you don't know how the story is going to end. Like that's the hard part too, is you are literally you are going alongside her as she's experiencing this. Like, is there part of you, not like the medical side of you, but like the storyteller side of you, like, is this going to be a good story? Like,
I think when you have a great personality
yeah,
like Ariana, who's just being raw, real, and open,
yes,
it's going to be a good story no matter how it goes. It's not like Bravo or TLC where we need to find the drama, script in the drama.
no, yeah,
It just life happens, and pregnancy and birth tend to have drama built into them. Sometimes it's beautiful drama. It's not always
right,
bad drama, but
yeah,
you don't have to script it, flavor it, or add anything to it. Um, I'm we have a documentary film, Trial of Labor, which follows 4 women through their subsequent pregnancies after they had either 1 or 2 cesarean births that they hadn't planned on,
hmm,
and sometimes didn't feel like they needed in the after it was all said and done. And so for each one, they're on a journey looking for a better birth experience.
hmm,
And it's kind of interesting because when we made that film, we just wondered. I had a filmmaking partner who's a real filmmaker, and me, who just tinkers in my garage, and uh, we just. I thought there was a story about this, about the unexpected cesarean, and
Mm-hmm.
the journey towards VBAC, and we put out a casting call just to ask if anybody wanted to share the story while they were pregnant. Now,
Mm-hmm.
not to make a film, just to see if there was a film to be made. We were
Mm.
just doing research and
Yeah.
gathering data. And four of the women that came in had such like powerful and dramatic stories, and they were so just also open book and real, and just saying,
Mm-hmm.
this is me, and this is how I felt physically,
Yeah.
emotionally, and spiritually, looking at the whole organism, and this is how it affected me afterwards in various different ways in my life, in my relationships, and everything. Um, and we felt like, oh my goodness, we need to share these stories. But
Right.
they were already knee deep in pregnancy. And,
Right.
making a film like that, usually you have time to storyboard, you have
Mm-hmm.
time to fundraise because there's a lot of
Right.
production cost involved. We didn't have anything. We just said, let's jump in head first and see how it goes. And for each of those four, they were trying to have vaginal birth after cesarean. We had no idea how they were going to end. Would they
Mm-hmm.
all be VBACs? Would they all be C-sections? Somewhere in between.
Right.
And we just committed to each other, my partner and I, Rob. We just said, however these stories go, it's just real. And
Right.
you can't go wrong sharing real. You could say
Right.
at the end, the statistics are X, Y, or Z, and,
Right.
a sampling of four is not conclusive, what to expect for yourself. But we followed them, and that also came out really well. I'm
Mm-hmm.
proud of that film, Child Labor. But it was the same thing. I was like on the edge of my seat. How are these going to
Right.
go?
Yeah. Well, I think that's such a I don't know. It seems kind of like, of course, you wouldn't know. You having attended, probably thousands of births at this point. I've had my own kids, kind of working in this space. You just don't know. But I think back on kind of that first time mom that you haven't walked through the portal yet, or at least that's what I like to call it, where you think and even if people tell you stories and things like that, oh, that's not going to be me. Like, how do you hope that kind of listening to some of these things will impact not only the people that are navigating birth multiple times or, kind of trying to make sense of their own, but also to educate people that are looking at birth for the first time? Because I feel like that's a whole other kind of mindset that we're navigating.
Absolutely. And I think we're in a tough time when it comes to that. It used to
Hmm.
be not that long ago, not in my lifetime, but not that long ago, when people lived with their families. You lived around your
Right,
family, you lived on a family property, you were in a village, and you saw birth all the time. You saw pregnancy, you saw birth, you saw postpartum, you saw breastfeeding. And not only did you see it, you were a part of it. When someone in your family was on this journey, you were there to help them and support them. And when it was your turn, they were there to help you and support you. So you had a lot of exposure to what normal, natural pregnancy, birth, postpartum
right,
would look like, and you had a lot of help doing it. Nowadays, I think a lot of people get to their first pregnancy, they get to their first birth, and they have no exposure to what
right,
normal childbirth looks like, what normal pregnancy looks like, healthy, just plain old pregnancy. Our impressions come from what we see in TV, movies, and newspapers, and so
right,
that's always going to be highly dramatized and not reality. And maybe what you hear horror stories around the water cooler. And I think that's a huge disservice. I think, like, if you've never been on an airplane before and all you knew about air travel was what you read in newspapers and headlines and see in the
yeah,
movies or see on TV, then you could be quite terrified and might not even be able to do it. You might have to be medically, knocked out
right.
in order to take that flight. But really, in reality, most planes take off every day. They have a great flight and land safely. Some of them have incredible snacks. It could be a good experience, and
Right,
you just don't have that expectation, that realistic possibility. So it's weird because I think that it's such a natural thing, meaning like you don't have to think very hard to conceive. And once you've done the act, like everything that comes from that point forward, you don't have to
right,
think about it all.
yeah,
The egg gets fertilized and it implants, it makes an embryo, it drops down, it implants, it grows into a human being. It's just like such a complex, incredible process that happens on autopilot, that the final process, delivering the finished product, is also completely within the realm of what the body can handle, what it's
Hmm.
programmed to do. And if there was a good connection with the inner voice, then I think it would be great to not necessarily have exposure to birth stories, bring other people's experiences into your own. But
Hmm.
I don't think we have confidence. I don't think we have exposure, so it's foreign. And I
Right.
don't think we have a great connection. Most of us, I don't have a great connection to that inner voice. Like, if I
Yeah.
was really in tune with my nutritional inner voice, I would be much healthier, because I would hear it and heed to it. And it tells me exactly what I need to eat and how much I need to eat and when I need to eat to be
Yeah.
strong and healthy and not have excess and not have the wrong things. But on my way to the office, I pass at least five enormous billboards. One of them has a giant stack of fluffy pancakes with butter dripping down the side. Like, my voice is buried. I'm sure it's in there someplace, but it doesn't have a billboard. And so
Yeah.
what happens is, I think people get to birth with only the rotten information, bad input,
Yeah.
and no connection to the voice. And that combination is not good. It's doing a huge disservice, very disempowering. And so, because of that, I think it's important to get exposure to,
Hmm.
in whatever ways you can, to what birth looks like. I think a lot of my patients, I turn them on to animal birth stories in the wild,
Hmm.
like just videos of animals giving birth in the wild, and it's very inspiring to them. Like, oh my goodness, there's like, first of
Yeah.
all, this elephant did not listen to a podcast, did not read a book, did not take a childbirth education course,
Right.
did not drink green juice, although probably it's some other healthy things, and does not have a doula, oftentimes no partner there, no
Hmm.
midwife, no doctor, and they just seem to know what they're doing. They go into labor, they do all these different things and deliver their baby. And then most often they turn around and do all the neonatal care. They
Right.
do an assessment, and if something's wrong, they actually have like different kind of remedies that they can try to do to correct whatever's wrong. And I guess what they realize is, the point is, you have all this programming, this hardwiring inside you. I'm not suggesting that everybody go have a wild birth with no assistance. It's great that we
Yeah.
have these other things, but they shouldn't be in lieu of the
Yeah.
nature and the wisdom and the strength and the power that, you will have inherently, that every woman has inherently.
Yeah, I feel like it's such a kind of a mixed conversation. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Like, most people they see like 5 seconds on a TV show, and then the baby comes out with like cream cheese and grape jelly on their head or something like that. Isn't that what they do to the babies to make them look
uh,
like freshly born or something? I read that somewhere.
Delicious.
Right? I was like, this sounds good. And then half the babies that they use on TV anyway are like a couple months old anyway. They're obviously not going to use like a newborn.
And now
Um,
animatronic babies.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. And AI and all that kind of stuff. So, um, to your point, like, I think that makes a lot of sense. I also find it interesting that there's some women that are totally focused on kind of the preparation for pregnancy and delivery. And then there's some that are just like, whatever. And I never know if that's a good or a bad thing. I've been in DC 20 some odd years. We're a little type A around here. We like to prepare for things. And especially our older moms, having been one, like, we like to control all the things. And again, I feel like it's this double-edged sword of, you think you control all this, you can do all this. And one of the first things that they say when they come in, I said, well, what's your plan? What is it that you would like to accomplish? What do you want out of this birth, obviously, other than a kid? And one of the first things out of their mouth is, they're like, I don't want to have a C-section. And that's the one that also kind of hits me a little strange. And we've chatted about this. I had two. And so it's weird sitting there with somebody that's basically like, hey, what you went through, I'm trying to avoid that. I'm like, yeah, I would try and avoid that too.
Mm.
But also helping them navigate, like, we're going to do the best we can. We do have this innate natural ability, but we can't control all of these things. I feel like it's such a hard line to walk when you're kind of talking with clients, and then also kind of talking through these stories, or working with these stories. Like, what's the narrative that's going on in your head, and then also what did you see kind of like well we won't have a full spoiler with Ariana, but like what's the narrative that's going through your head to how to help people navigate this line of they're like, I don't want this, I want that, but you also know that it's going to be a little wonky, and we can't control every piece of it.
Yeah, Ariana was taken by surprise by her cesarean. She hadn't planned for it at all. She hadn't thought about it, and she was
Yeah.
going for the total opposite experience. And so that's a common thing that you see, and you wonder maybe the aftermath would not have been so negatively impactful had there been some preparation, some vision, some
Right.
open-mindedness. And in truth, every single birth could end in a cesarean.
Right.
Baby could be head down, placenta's in a good place, still ends in a C-section for one reason or another. And so it is complex because I generally want to tell people to explore. Like we have an episode of our podcast that's pretty popular called "The Gentle Cesarean," and that person, we have a guest, a mom who was pregnant at the time, and an obstetrician, a great guy, Dr. Emiliano Shavira, who breaks everything down really well. And her birth plan was actually only one sentence: no C-section. Not even a
Mm,
full sentence. No C-section. I don't
yeah.
care about anything else. I just don't want to have a cesarean. Well, she had a breech baby, and she was pretty small and really stiff, tight, rigid, low fluid. Like everything was working against that baby turning.
Hmm.
And I kind of knew that her odds of having a cesarean were going to be very high.
Hmm.
Um, and so I was like, let's sit down with Dr. Shavira and learn more about the cesarean birth.
Right.
And it was really helpful for her. He broke it down into the different things that would be happening,
Hmm.
what they're doing, what it might feel like, and almost really importantly, where you have choices and options. Like
Yes.
you do have some say in how it
Yeah.
goes. And then also how to not lose the fact that it's a birth. It's still this magical
Yeah.
moment in time where a baby is coming through your body into the universe. And that doesn't have to get lost because it's surgical, but it usually does, or it often does. And so I usually try to encourage them. When people are like, "What's 5 episodes of your podcast that I should listen to?" I almost always include that one
Yeah.
because if you have a cesarean birth and you know what to expect and you know what's
Yes.
happening, even if it wasn't your choice, your plan A choice,
Yep.
I think it's a smoother transition. But I also learned over time, and I'm still learning over time. It's a lesson that I'll probably be learning my whole life. Everyone's different, and
Yeah.
some people strongly want one thing, and some people strongly want another thing.
Hmm.
And as a human, as a practitioner, if I very strongly think the other thing is going to be important for you, better for you, um, it's not my choice. And so all
Right.
I can do is present information if they want it.
Yep.
Some people don't want it,
Yep.
and present it as honestly as I can, and then you make the choice, and I work as hard as I can to support the choices you make, even if they're not the choices I would have made for my family, or even I would recommend for you. But
Yeah.
that's a difficult thing to do. So what I like to do with media is put it out there so it
Yeah.
exists, and then
Yep.
if you want it, take it, and if you don't want it, leave it. And even some episodes, we have stories that are sometimes hard to listen to in general, and especially
Hmm.
if you're pregnant, maybe you don't want to hear that kind of story, and you always have the option to tune out and either pick up a different episode or not. And
Yeah.
that is a lesson I learn all the time, even with chiropractic. I'm like, you really need to release this
Yeah.
vertebra. This neck adjustment would be great for you, and some people just don't want to have their neck adjusted, and
Yeah.
I get it. It's much easier for me now than at the beginning. I'm like, oh my goodness, you have this
Yeah.
debilitating neck pain. You're having these headaches. We could make it go away with an
Right.
adjustment, but it's not my choice. And
I I think that's something I read a quote the other day from a colleague of mine that was something along the lines of that, like, if somebody's going to listen to you, they're probably already walking towards you, and you saying something just in a different way probably isn't, and you trying to fix something for them or make them, if you just say it a certain way, that'll make it up their mind, isn't usually the case. And
mhm,
I very much felt that too. Like you kind of, when I talk to moms that are very like anti C-section, chances are they don't even know what it is. And if the one thing that I do mention, and I think you would agree with this too, is like at least encourage them to know what it is. Because I did not going into my first. It was a really different experience. But going into my second, I'm like, this is old hat. I don't want to be here. But yeah, at least it, and I think how your body sort of processes that experience. I'm like, at least know what, again, like this is going to be the situation that they would likely be offering this to you. This is what the experience typically looks like. Know what it is so that if it does come up, you're at least prepared somewhat,
Hmm.
because that's where I see most of the trauma for things that people I mean, because you can't fully prepare for everything, but at least know what the basics are. Because people, again, you talk to your friends, you hear the bad stories or the really good stories, and then obviously that's going to be what you compare yourself against.
Totally. I also think it's important to note that the cesarean is an excellent innovation that we have.
I'm
Um,
happy for it.
yeah, it's incredible. It's an incredible option that we have that
Yeah.
we didn't have not too long ago, and it does save a lot of lives. And it's
Yeah.
not the idea is not to be anti-cesarean, but
Right.
is to be empowering for somebody to have the birth experience that they want to have.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll have a patient who young, strong, healthy, no reason to really clinically do surgery, but they want to have that cesarean birth for one reason or another. And
Mm-hmm.
that also took time for me to get around, advocating for them to be able to have it, because sometimes the doctors don't want to do it
Right.
if they don't need it. And it's a choice that I'm glad that we have. I generally
Mm-hmm.
say I think probably one of the only things worse than forcing a cesarean on someone who doesn't want it and doesn't need it is not having one available for someone who
Right.
does need it.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think everybody, I just try to encourage the birth plan to be a flow chart. Like on page one, you
Mm-hmm.
put the most natural birth that you would like to have or consider having,
Mm-hmm.
as what you're aiming for, and then be flexible so that if something comes up, if you do have, let's say, your placenta sitting right on top of your cervix, then maybe a cesarean birth is a better way to go. And there's everything in between. So a flow chart, like if this happens, I'd explore my options. Oh, between those options, I'd rather do A than B, if
Right.
all things being equal. And at the end of that flow chart is always going to be a cesarean birth, because if you really need one, then you certainly want one.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and if that happens, it's not like your birth plan failed. It's like
Right.
you followed your birth plan through to the end.
Right.
And you made that difficult choice to have that cesarean birth because it was the right choice to make in that moment.
Yeah, but it is. It totally is walking through that thought process and those steps and understanding there's all these different pathways that, yeah, it might eventually end up at the same place no matter what path you take. But with Ariana, she is very like her story is basically trying to get to this VBAC. And can we just quickly go over, what a VBAC is for people that may not know what it is, and then why somebody might consider it, and then how you go about finding somebody if this is what you would like to do.
Yeah, Ariana's looking to have a more empowered birth experience and hoping to have a VBAC, vaginal birth after cesarean. So once you have a C-section, your next pregnancy, you really have two choices. You could either have a repeat cesarean, or a vaginal birth after cesarean. She wanted the vaginal birth experience. She wanted to feel the baby coming through her body into the world. She wanted to do it the way she was built to do it and not have to have surgery. And a lot of I have so many patients, like you said. I've been involved in thousands of pregnancies and birth experiences, and I have a lot of patients that have the original cesarean, and whether they loved it or not, just do it again, either because they have a hard time finding providers who are supportive of VBAC, or because it's what they already know, or
Hmm.
because they had a long, difficult birth followed by a cesarean, and they don't want to have the recovery from both of those things again. They'll just go with a straight cesarean. It's kind of interesting, from when we were making trial of labor and interviewing a lot of people who had cesarean and then vaginal births. There was one group of people that stuck out to me. Uh, it's the people who had labor and then a cesarean, and then with their second baby, just had a cesarean with no labor.
Hmm.
And it wasn't a large group of people, but it was interesting that every single one of them felt like something was missing between the pregnancy and the birth. And
Interesting.
I would have thought before I had interviewed them that when you're trying to have a vaginal birth after cesarean, the number one outcome is you labor and give birth vaginally.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst outcome is you labor and have a C-section.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, uh, the middle outcome is you could just choose to have a C-section and avoid having that labor followed by a
Right.
C-section option, but giving up the idea of having labor followed by a vaginal birth. After interviewing that group of women, it sort of felt like they regretted not having labor. Like if they had the choice, they
Yeah.
actually would want to go into labor and have some labor, even if they knew they were having another cesarean birth.
Yeah.
Because something happened for them during the labor, during the contractions, during the hormonal
Yeah.
shift that they felt missing. Harder, they described it as a harder transition, harder to bond, more
Yeah.
surreal. They all use the word surreal.
That's
Um,
really interesting. I'm thinking about this two different ways. I'm thinking about this navigating it like from a pelvic floor perspective, I think they go through a lot more having like gone through labor, pushed, and then end up with a C. I feel like you've got almost two deliveries, the better part of two. And so I think the recovery is a lot harder. And then I'm also smiling because that was my first birth experience, like literally induction, 3 days, ended up pushing, and then a C-section. And then with my daughter, went into labor 2 hours before I was supposed to be at the hospital. She still owes me like 2 hours sleep, which I remind her of all the time. But I said, hey, we're not going to do this whole thing and we talked about VBAC. We're like, hey, if it looks like it's a go, let's do it. If it looks like we're going to do this whole thing again,
mhm.
and then we're just going to end up with a C and have her be born on September 11th, which she was not.
Ah.
I'm like, we're not doing it. And like, you know what? It doesn't look good. I was like, you know what? We're cool. Let's take our time slot. Let's rock and roll. And you might as well give me the epidural because you're going to do it anyway. So,
Mhm.
but it's interesting because, yeah, because I did not naturally go into labor with my son, did with my daughter. So I guess I'm not exactly like the people that you're talking about. Yeah, I'm glad that I was able to do that naturally, but boy, it sucked for a little while. Like it was not fun. And I was like, all right, let's just, but I remember very much not wanting to be in the OR. Definitely not. I was like, let's just get this done. You guys do what you got to do and let me go home and move on. But I think it just goes to show that it's such a unique personal experience. And I think that's what I loved so much about this One Way or Mother podcast was that you can have patterns of people that go different ways, like what you just said, but it literally, there's so much nuance, there's so much individuality to each of our stories and why we get the choices or not choices that we get. Why, you guys bring in, Aria's family and, this is all going on also in the last couple of years and having to navigate, the hospital system a first time around during COVID. Like there's so many parts and pieces to this that make everybody's experience so different yet so valuable, but should be just acknowledged and appreciated for what it is. That's, I think, what I loved about it was how many women don't get a chance to share their story and live with whatever regrets or things they're proud of, or I don't know. I mean, you tend to follow up a lot with your clients. Like, do you get to see some of that after the fact, or people talk about, I wish this, or I'm really glad about that?
Absolutely, all the time. Sometimes they talk to me about it, and sometimes they talk to my wife about it, who's a perinatal psychologist. And it can leave a mark if it didn't go the way you were hoping,
Yeah.
or if it just took you by surprise in different ways. And sometimes, the stories are really beautiful. People surprise themselves by the experience and how good it was, and
Hmm.
how strong they felt in the moment, how alive they felt, how vibrant, how connected to the baby they felt while the baby was moving down through their body into the world. Those are some of the most incredible things that people like. I have people not too long after they give birth say, "I can't wait to do it again." which your reaction is the common one when they say that,
No, we're
But
good.
yeah. So, I see surprise on both sides,
Yeah.
and I really, what I try to do is usher the opportunity for people to have that second kind of experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really just a little conversation on the first or second visit when they're coming to see me, about just have you given birth any thought, and
Right.
that can just spark a little conversation. And what I generally get is, I'm planning, what I really want to do is go to the hospital and get the epidural as soon as possible, and just have a pain-free birth.
Yeah.
Uh, and that is a way to go. But then, I'm like, have you thought about other
Hmm.
options? And then thankfully now we have all this media that they can explore and see.
Yeah.
I think a very, very popular episode of our podcast, which is Hilary Duff before and
Yeah.
after her second baby, because she had one that was medicated with in the hospital, and she had a good experience with it, and she had the second one that was totally unmedicated at home, and she had a good experience. But she's also a great storyteller, and also had all the feelings, like,
Hmm.
I'm afraid of this, and
Hmm.
that's why I numb myself to it the first time. But then I realized I love being a mom, and one of the things I love about being a mom is doing things presently with my son. And what if this is the coolest thing I could do presently with my child, but I'm afraid of it, so I'm numbing myself.
Yeah.
And she, like, psyched herself up, and she went for it, and she had a great experience. And spoiler alert, she had her next two kids at home with a midwife as well. So,
Yeah.
just to explore, and somebody relatable, and somebody who's also just real and honest with her feelings,
Hmm.
telling the story. And what I love about it is she had a good experience both ways. And so it's
Right.
oftentimes you have one people who did both, but love one and hate the other, as an advocate for
Right.
one and really campaigns against the other. She's just saying this is how it was, and it was good.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I was thinking about with Ariana's story was you guys chat with her mom. And, you know, it's, I don't think it's fair to compare generational birth stories because I feel like the contexts are so much different. What are some of the challenges that you see, um, you know, with women that come in that they did hear their own birth story or something like that, and maybe it wasn't great from their mom, or maybe it was disconnected or whatever that was. Like, how do you see that play out in, some of these stories that you're able to witness?
Well, it's interesting to see the relationships people have with their moms. That is always, for me, as an observation. Um, it's by itself, regardless of the story itself, is interesting. It always makes me think about my relationship with my mom, and my relationship with my kids, and my wife's relationship with our kids. And some of them, like Ariana and her mom, Alex, they just have a really open relationship, and they talk about everything. And so, Ariana knew her birth story really well, I think even before her first birth. And we had them in the studio together chatting about it. It's really sweet to watch. And I think that relationship, just having that openness in the relationship, again, regardless of the birth story, is a powerful thing, to be connected to it. And
Hmm.
in this case, Ariana's mom had a to advocate for the birth that she wanted, hard, and she did. And so I think that Ariana also felt that empowerment is
Hmm.
in me. You know, I can do that too. Um, I mentioned earlier that I'll sometimes have a patient who is young, strong, and healthy, and wants to have a C-section. Um, One story that comes to mind is a patient whose mom had a really, really difficult birth with her,
Hmm.
and never quite recovered from it physically.
Mm.
And so I think her whole life she's been told, yeah, I suffer every day because of my birth with you. And
Mm.
so that, you know, that made her feel like, I don't want to do that. I know that if I do a cesarean birth, there's going to be some trauma involved. Surgery has natural trauma involved.
Hmm.
But I'll take that over what could be if I let nature have its way with me.
Yeah.
And so I think those birth stories definitely have an impact. When I, I think if you haven't been told your birth story in great detail, you still lived it and experienced it, and
Right.
you're consciously aware of it at that time, and it leaves a memory for you that
Yeah.
you may or may not be in touch with. But I think it definitely has impact.
Yeah. I think about that now as my kids are older, both in middle school, and even just openly talking about birth itself. And my kids love to hear their stories. And I think the story I got from my mom, I was a second kid. I think she made my dad liver and onions while she was in labor, got him dinner, and then they eventually made their way, 40 minutes to drive to the hospital. And then I was born like 10 minutes before the next day. My dad and I have the same birthday. And so that's my birth
Ah,
story. So
yeah.
it's stuff to do with liver and onions and my dad. It has nothing to like, I have no idea. She
What it was
left
like for
out
your
the whole
mom?
part, right? Exactly. I was like, what is wrong with you? He can make his own fight. Liver and onions again in June. Like, this is weird.
Hmm.
And so it's funny kind of what comes out, but that's one thing that I always I think I'm a little bit more aware of now, especially when I have a patient that has navigated a challenging delivery and they're looking for a different experience. And those things come out of their mouths that they maybe don't realize they're saying to their kids about like this, I had to drag you out into the world. Like I joke that my son, because like he's very much my homebody kid and he was a hard delivery. And I was like, it was up to you. You'd still be in there. And like, really? Is that a good thing to be saying? Like, that's a little awkward for a
No,
14-year-old boy, right?
how's your 27th trimester? Okay.
Right, exactly. But no, I think this is the other thing too, that like when you are in this space, I think it's the whole world, everything. But I think, you step away from it a little bit, and you look back and it's this small, very important blip, but obviously can have such ramifications later on. And I think that's really hard to kind of explain to somebody who's in the weeds. They're pregnant, they're facing down delivery, or they're trying to have a different, like, you're trying to be like, someday this is how you will look at this. Like, how do you help people, or do you help people kind of understand, like, you know, we're going to figure all this stuff. We're going to do the very best that we can with the information that we have and the choices that we can do. Someday this won't be quite so dire, magnificent, but it might be. Like, how do you kind of tackle that, or don't you?
I think it just depends person to person. For the
Yeah.
people that are open and receptive and want that, I certainly I try to paint a very broad picture of what things can be like, and um, try to help them envision what it is that they want from the experience. You
Yeah.
know, I try to help them connect with the baby more consciously. I think that's always helpful to try to do it together. Some people
Mm-hmm.
don't want to connect until the baby's out, and that's okay
Mm-hmm.
too. So, the way you described it is, for me, is that's how it was as a doula. I was a wrestler in high school, and so when you're on the mat, the rounds are pretty short. They're only a few minutes long, but you're using every single muscle
Yeah.
all at the same time, and you run out of oxygen very quickly. And so, and you don't have a full view of what's happening. You have your
Right.
perspective, but you have your coach on the side who has plenty of oxygen and can see the bird's eye view, can see the full picture. And so the coach sometimes is like yelling at you, screaming out, do this maneuver, do an inside roll, inside roll. And your brain is like, inside roll, but you just do it because
Right.
he has the oxygen, he has the full perspective.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, like that, when you're trying to overcome those images that people have from the TV movies and newspaper headlines and horror stories, and they're in the moment, and they don't have the oxygen, they're don't have the full perspective from the outside of what's happening. If they want it, if they reach out for a little bit of help, I sometimes feel like that wrestling coach. I'm like,
Mm.
do this. This is going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm never telling them to work against their own body or intuition, but I'm like, here's a suggestion, do this. And sometimes that comes across, in a really, really helpful way. If we built up a lot of trust, and
Right.
and they take that little cue
Mm-hmm.
and it helps them really find their inner voice and inner strength and get out of fight or flight mode, and believe and have confidence, then it could be such an incredible game changer. And that was some of my favorite things about being at a birth. If we can,
Yeah.
that moment of change when it goes from fight or flight and the adrenaline starts to disappear and be replaced with oxytocin, it's
Mm-hmm.
just an incredible thing to witness. And so for the people who want it, I try to, help them find a pathway to that experience.
Yeah, no, the longer I'm kind of in this space, and I'm sure this happens in other professions too, like it's just the collaborative privilege that we have to work with people and help them find kind of that own, like, what is it that you want? How, finding that inner drive or that inner motivation or whatever it is. I feel like that's so powerful to be able to help people find that for themselves. And it's
Mm-hmm.
far better than being that person to tell them the right or wrong thing to do because we don't know. I mean, we're giving you our best guess here, right? And I think as a professional, it's so much more fulfilling to be on that team. And again, I thought that was one of the coolest things about this podcast series was to be able to acknowledge there are so many team members that are at the end of the day pulling for the same thing but doing their little part and kind of helping Ariana get to where she's trying to go. Is that something? I mean, obviously, Doula is their ground floor team member, no matter what. That's kind of what they signed up for. But like, do you feel that sort of the longer you've been in this space is you're kind of just that coach? You're that wrestling coach on the sidelines trying to draw out that piece of information exactly when they need it.
I'm trying to recreate the village. And I think what you
Yeah,
see in one way or another is you see many residents of the village lining up around Ariana and supporting her.
yeah.
Um, but it's the kind of advice, even the wrestling coach analogy, it's the kind of advice rather than saying push now, push now, push now. It's like, can you find the voice that's telling you the urge to push? And then
Mm,
listen to that voice. So it's trying to help her find her natural choose tools and
mm-hmm,
intuition, which are just so much more in touch with those billions of sensors that you have inside there in your body, in the orchestration of so many millions, so many parts that
mm-hmm,
need to work together in a very orchestrated way. That's so much more brilliant than anything we could think of in our educated mind,
mm-hmm.
and sort of give advice based on that. If you can get in touch with the much deeper innate wisdom, that's
Yeah.
always going to be better than if you have to rely on our educated wisdom. It's there, we have, and we've learned a lot, we know a bunch, but we
Mm-hmm.
still know very little compared to what's hardwired and programmed inside. So the for me, the role of doula oftentimes is just trying to help you get in touch with that voice, and
Yeah.
when you can't, then giving you, thoughts, tips, and suggestions based on what we know.
Yeah. No, I've definitely seen an uptick here locally. Again, we're super lucky in the DC metro area to have a lot of resources. Um, Pregnancy doulas, postpartum doulas. I can't wait. You guys need to come up with a whole nother field. Follow me. Perimenopause doula. We could use a little help over here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm looking forward to talking to you about that on my podcast, Informed Pregnancy, because it's, look, I started with fertility. That's how we got into this whole
Yeah.
space. My wife and I had
Yeah.
a rough fertility story. We overcame it naturally, and we try to help other people overcome it. And then we got into pregnancy, and the next thing you know, you're also involved in birth, and then postpartum and
Mm-hmm.
early parenting. Well, perimenopause is, that's just where my patient base is going.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know enough about it, and I'm very excited to interview you shortly on the Informed Pregnancy podcast to learn from you about it.
Yeah.
But I absolutely think I mean, now there's end of life doulas, and like
Right.
I would love if there were business doulas, like when you have one of those
Yeah.
business bombshells that come up. Hold on, I got to call my business doula because I'm never going to be able to get a hold of my lawyer, and he's like, $700 an hour.
I think we just created a whole new profession.
Yes, Shark Tank. Okay.
You guys, you heard it here. This is the OG. Doula for all the things. I think it's going to have to be a separate person, though. There's a lot of skill sets in there, but I
Yeah,
like the general concept for sure. I'm a huge fan.
doulas make everything better.
You know what? I'm down for that. I'm down for that. So I'm excited to. We've already we dropped episode 1 into our podcast recently, and then you guys who are listening, if you want to check out those other episodes, when is season 2 coming? Do we know yet?
Excellent question. Season 2 is very delicate, and I would say it's probably going to be not until, if I had to guess, it would be probably the fall. So
Gotcha. So fall
September.
2025. Okay.
Yeah, and then we're working on season 3 at the same time. Other cool stuff coming though. We have on Informed Pregnancy Plus, the streaming platform. We have a pretty cool show called The Fourth Try, which is all about postpartum, and trying to shine a spotlight on that period, which needs more light, needs more attention, more focus. And so this is our first effort at trying to help people become aware of different things that they can do for healing in all the different ways in the postpartum. So it's called The Fourth Try, and talk about, following a pregnancy that you have no idea where it's going to go.
Right.
We have a new streaming program called Growing. The first one is Growing with Garrett, who has a very easy conception, very easy pregnancy, and then a god-awful postpartum experience, breastfeeding experience, and secondary infertility experience. And we catch up with her finally after overcoming all of that, pregnant with her second, and we follow her every single week in a short snippet, 10 minutes a week. And it's a video series, so she really illustrates with a lot of pictures and video. And right now we're midway through the pregnancy, and every week I have no idea what to expect. And there's a lot riding. She's trying to set up a very, very different post-birth experience here, but it's a roller coaster. She's struggling with a lot of things and working hard to overcome them. So that's the Growing series, starting with Growing with Garrett, which will be launching pretty soon in the next month or so.
That's great. No, I think, number one, I think it's amazing for you to give space for these women to share their stories, these team members, family members, that sort of thing, because I think there's not enough places where women are given just an open chance to share that, and then also to thank you to those birthing people that are like, hey, come in with me. I don't know how this is going to play out. I'm willing to be vulnerable. Like, that's a scary place too. So I mean, I appreciate not only you giving them space to do that, but for them to kind of open their doors and vulnerabilities to letting us kind of experience it and witness. Because again, I think the more that we can hear other people that maybe have stories that resonate with us or something we can connect with, and there's always something we can connect with.
Totally.
I think the less we feel alone, the less we feel like we have to handle all this ourselves, the less we feel burdened or whatever it is. So, and maybe we do create that village again, whether it be over the airwaves or YouTube or whatever that may be. So I appreciate you taking all this time and effort to sharing those stories. So thank you.
Carrie. Thank you so much.
All right. So if you want to find out more about One Way or a Mother and all the other projects that Dr. Berlin is working on, you can find him over on Instagram at Dr. Berlin. Thanks so much as usual, and we can't wait to see season 2. If you're navigating pregnancy, postpartum, or perimenopause, whether personally or professionally, check out all our free resources and upcoming courses at carriepagliano.com. This podcast reflects the opinions of Dr. Carrie Pagliano and her guests, and it is for entertainment purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider with any medical questions. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. And thanks for listening.